when you saw, first responders or something. And so her sister actually texted me and said, hey, there's people going towards your sister's house. And so I remember we were going to pick up a pizza, and I was like, I don't have a good feeling about this. We need to go check this out.
I would just sit in my car in the garage and just like cry on the phone with my mom and pray with my mom and say to her multiple times, like, how do I as a wife support my husband through this? Like, what words do you have to say?
For us, a church that you can not only know pretty much everyone there, but something that has a firm foundation and something that you can grow with.
The experience that you had, you have a marked difference between having that church family and not having that church family.
And usually we don't get calls that late, right? And so I kind of jumped out of bed. I heard my dad's ringtone, and I answered the phone like, what happened, I think is what I said. Her heart kind of gave out, and with whatever happened, and she's no longer here.
Tragedy. It's a part of the human experience. A part of us knows it's inevitable, but we still want to somehow escape it. Picture this: a global pandemic, the unexpected loss of a sibling, having to deal with that during the isolation of said pandemic, then a few short years later, the loss of another sibling. How would you deal with that? But through it all, Aaron and Paige Cook discovered something: how faith and community are intertwined, how crucial family is, as Jesus defined it, to a deepening of that faith, and how taking the time to refocus helps us zero in on the really important stuff. Please welcome Aaron and Paige Cook. Hey guys.
Hey.
So we're going to start with some quick draw questions. So they're just fun questions just to kind of loosen you up a little bit. Okay, so after a long day, what's your favorite way to relax?
I like to just lay in bed and watch TV. That's my favorite thing to do.
Gosh, I like to come home, maybe just sit on the couch, kind of watch TV. I don't know, occasionally play video games, but sometimes she teases me. I like to go out in the garage and just do random things. I don't know.
Mess around in the garage.
Hang out in the garage.
garage
It's my
for
spot.
Guys thing, yeah. Well, okay. Can you describe your worst haircut or hairdo you've ever had?
Easily, yeah. Mine was actually a couple years ago. I had I was doing a hard part on this side, and I had the girl cut it, and she had, she has my back facing the mirror, and she shaved it almost completely down to nothing, all the way to this part, which was really high, and turned me around and was like, "How's it look?" I'm like, "Oh well, it's not, girl. I can't have you glue it back, so it's fine, I guess." And it was not a good look. I got made fun of for that one.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I think my first haircut was probably when I decided that scissors were really cool when you're a kid.
Oh.
And so, every girl decides at some point to give them a bang, the bang cut. So I had bangs for a while
Yeah.
because I gave myself my own haircut.
Was
That's-
it straight?
Oh, sure. I'm
course
sure
not.
it was not. Sure it was not.
Positive it was not straight. Let's see. Okay, how about describe your first date, but we're going to get woman's point of view and then a guy's point of view.
Go ahead.
So our first date, technically we weren't actually dating. We went to prom as friends.
Oh, okay.
My junior year, his senior year.
Yep.
And I was about 2 weeks after prom. I was supposed to have my gallbladder removed and have surgery.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm an anxious person anyways, and it didn't help that I was having like a bunch of gut issues. And so I actually got sick after we had dinner for prom. And so everyone else in our group left. He sat and stayed and waited, and we weren't actually gonna like go to prom because I didn't feel good. And then actually I got the courage and over the anxiety and started to feel better. So we drove a little bit later and went to our prom and danced, and it was nice because we weren't there the whole time. And then
Yeah, it worked out better that
it
way,
was way
honestly.
better.
Nice.
And then we ended up going back to his house that night and watched some movies. And I will say that was when we discovered clearly we liked each other. And I always like to say that I'm the one that kissed him because he was too scared.
It's not true. It's not true.
Not true. Yeah, okay, let's hear your point of view.
So true.
My point of view is that that is kind of true, actually, and I just don't like to admit it. But yeah, everything she said was definitely the case for us. You know, at first I was kind of bummed when, like she said, she got sick, and I thought, man, I'm gonna miss my senior prom. But then I thought, you know, I have this awesome girl here, and we're just hanging out and talking, and that was probably more fun than what we were gonna have hanging out in a group of 600 kids at the state museum anyways. So but we eventually went and we had a great time, and yeah, it was really nice. Like she said, we were friends, and that's what we planned on going as. It was kind of a last minute thing, honestly, and I'm so glad we did, because here we are 12 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, 12 years. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a good question. If you were a superhero, what would your theme song be?
Oh.
Oh man, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if I had to pick one, I would pick just like the Avengers theme song in general, because it reminds me of Captain America. And I always said I felt like I resonated the most with Captain America, because I kind of like that era. I like the 50s and the
Yeah.
60s, and kind of how he acts and talks and everything. So that'd be probably my theme.
I don't know if I have like a song specifically, but I've always really liked the Black Widow and how like mysterious she is, but she's very intelligent. And so I don't know if it's necessarily like a theme song from her, but like I would be her.
I like that.
She's like a spy. She's a normal superhero, not like superpower superhero.
Yeah. I like that. All right, one more, and then we'll jump into this. You ready? What's the most embarrassing fashion trend you have ever committed to?
Gauchos.
Oh, wow.
I don't
Okay.
even remember what's
Gauchos.
Gauchos.
The big baggy capris that were real flowy, and then you wore the big like fake leather belts with the buckle. I mean, this was like total middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, gauchos. Gauchos are not. They're not.
They had their
cute.
time.
They had their time. They're not very cute.
Yeah. Agree.
I experimented with some frosted tips
Oh, you.
when I was in 5th grade. Yeah, but because I
That
went
was when
to
boy bands were good.
yeah, yeah. Except they didn't turn out to be frosted tips. That's what I wanted. I guess I was going for the lead singer of LFO type of look there, but that didn't happen. And I'm just getting blonde highlights all throughout my hair, and I had the little silver necklace and everything like that. And yeah, looking back though, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
It's funny though.
But you thought you were great. That's what
I thought it was
right?
awesome. Yeah,
You're
I thought I
confident.
looked great.
See, you committed. That's the good thing.
Committed to it.
For sure.
All right. Well, we'll jump in here. So, Aaron and Paige, I'm going to have you both just kind of describe your family and your faith backgrounds.
So I was raised in the church. My parents were in youth ministry. I was actually raised in a Lutheran church. We left the church it was a distance from our house. I ended up at a mega church, and that's where we ended up going for a while. We went to 2 different mega churches, and I had actually experienced church hurt at one of the churches. We were like asked to leave the church. So that was like a weird circumstance for our family, which ended us up at another mega church. And we were always involved with youth ministry. So youth ministry was like what I grew up in. And so we always just felt connected because that's what we did. My parents were either youth pastors or youth leaders, or we did productions, or we did all the videos, and we did youth retreats and things like that. And so I just like grew up doing that. And just was raised in the church and always loved it. And, I have some of my best memories with like people in youth groups and ski trips I would go on and things like that.
Oh, great.
My story is similar but different. Different in the sense that my parents were not really involved in terms of leading youth ministry or anything like that. And I will say we probably didn't go attend church as much as you did, or we had larger gaps maybe. But I did grow up in a family where we attended church pretty much most of my childhood, and then the longest we probably spent in a church was at North Communities over in Westfield, which was a non-denominational kind of Nazarene church as well. And that's where we met a lot of the individuals that go here, including Pastor Jesse. So, but yeah, we, on and off, kind of went to some smaller churches, then also did the mega church thing, which was nice, but it's just difficult in that type of setting because you don't often see the same person twice. And if you do want to, you're kind of forced to get involved, which isn't a bad thing. It's always nice to get involved with a church, but in the event that maybe you don't have the time, or it's a busy season with work, or too much going on with kids or whatever, and you can't, you miss out on so much, and you don't get to build that relationship or rapport with people that you would in a in a smaller church like the Mill, for example. So that's kind of my family's background, and we've always attended for the most part.
Yeah. And you actually have kind of a connection to this church from early on, right?
Yes,
You wanna
yes.
share that with us?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, North Communities. Several of the people that attended that church at the time, at one point or another, had come here. I actually have two routes, I guess, of connection, you could say. One being that church with Jesse now being the pastor. I was a little kid, maybe in between 8 and 10 years old. He was about my age, actually a little younger. And he was in the worship band. Him and Angie, I believe, had just recently married a little before that, and grew up around them and a lot of the individuals that go here now. And then my other connection was actually through my old babysitter. He used to live across the street from me when I was a small kid, about 7, 8 years old, from the time that I was in preschool up to about 8 years old. Her father was the original pastor of this church, and so I had come here a few times as a child, and over the years, on and off. I mean, probably 3 or 4 times we'd come in different waves.
Yeah.
You could say, and it's crazy to see how much it's changed and grown and evolved, but still has that awesome kind of small church feel. And yeah, so lots of connections, small world, but we love it.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was Pastor Leitzel, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Um, and as you talk about your family, you had a great relationship with your sister and your brother. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that? Maybe
Yeah,
things you did as a kid together?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So we we're close knit family. We spent a lot of time together. So my brother and sister technically were my half siblings, and with that they were about almost 6 and 7 years older, respectively. My sister was the middle child, my brother was the oldest, and so I was the baby. And I was often, they let me know that I was the baby. So that age gap, it was kind of interesting because we were in kind of different stages of life. So there were certain things that we didn't do a lot together, but then there were lots of things we did, and we, anytime we went on vacations or just, all holidays, stuff like that. I mean, we always spent time with each other. We were, like I said, we were close knit. Regardless of the fact that they're technically my half siblings, we never acknowledge that. A lot of people I think do, and they sometimes don't even maintain close relationships. We never called each other that when we introduced each other. We may have had different last names, but we never treated it that way, right? And so, yeah, we always enjoyed hanging out with each other. They were the more, my sister, I should say, was the more outspoken, outgoing, loud,
Yes.
sometimes obnoxious one,
Yeah.
in a good way. She always meant to have fun. She, definitely the risk taker. My brother was more of the introvert, but I got all my hobbies of sports and wrestling at the time. I loved watching wrestling with him, from my brother. And then, of course, I was just, like I said, I was a little baby. So I kind of followed suit with whatever they were doing and learned from their mistakes often.
Yeah.
So that was always kind of nice sometimes, but yeah, it was good.
And you guys have been together for a long time,
Yes.
and you said you came into the marriage and just really got along with them as well, right? Like your family.
Yeah, I think Amber, I'm the oldest. And so Amber she always like kind of treated me like a sister that she never had. She loved to, I think, just like do things with me. just us in general, and then her daughter Cadence, and her daughter Cadence was obsessed with me. So
Yeah, that was funny.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now
my
that she's
niece.
18, she's not obsessed with me. So as a kid, she was.
You're the good aunt.
I'm the good aunt.
Nice.
Yeah,
And
I'm the only aunt.
you are the only aunt.
Yeah. Well,
And-
on this side of the family.
yeah, right.
So yeah.
Amber did always try to bring out a more extroverted side of Paige too, as well, because before Paige and I met, I feel like she came out of Rochelle a little bit more when we started dating as well. You were more of a kind of an introvert.
I was very
almost like
much an
Andrew
introvert,
Andrew
and
was.
his family definitely brought the extroverted out in
Yeah,
me
and
for
that was
sure.
that was definitely Amber. She pushed people outside of their comfort zones like it was her job, and
Yeah.
oftentimes it worked. So it made things fun, sometimes not fun, but it was great. Good memories.
Sounds like that was a good role for her to play. She did
Oh
a good
yeah,
job at
It was a
yeah,
good role.
she did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you grew up really close, but I know in 2020 that you kind of had a tragic experience there, and Amber passed away, and that was during COVID, so it must have been super difficult and just lonely.
Yeah.
How'd you get through that, and how did that kind of impact your faith at that point?
Yeah, it was looking back on it, it's still it's hard to like wrap my head around everything, because when you're in the middle of something like that, especially such a shock. I mean, she was only 32, right? It's just kind of hard to like see like what happened, and kind of what went on, just because everything's moving so quickly, it seems like. But I'll never forget getting the call actually from her sister, because my sister and Paige's family were neighbors, or like country neighbors. They lived down the country.
Okay.
So they weren't next door neighbors per se. Like
Couple
maybe
cornfields in
Yeah, a
between.
couple cornfields. But you always knew when you saw first responders or something. And so her sister actually texted me and said, "Hey, there's people going towards your sister's house." And so I remember we were going to pick up a pizza, and I was like, "I don't have a good feeling about this. We need to go check this out." And so we pulled up to her house, and that's when I saw them actually transporting her out to the ambulance. And so we didn't know a lot about what was going on at the time. We still don't have a lot of answers, but we just know that she her heart kind of gave out, and with whatever happened, and she's no longer here. And so what it felt like was just a total shock. Like I said, it didn't feel real. I thought, there's no way this is happening. And how it impacted my faith, it was interesting, because I don't know. I want to say I don't feel like I ever questioned my faith, right? And in fact, I feel like it strengthened it in a way. Of course, I think it's normal human reaction to say like, why God? Why is this happening? What you're looking for answers, and sometimes you may never get them. And I feel like I kind of accepted that quickly, and I was just more so now focused on the fact that I might not get these answers, I might not know why, but I'm not going to veer off from my faith. I need to lean into it, because this is a time where we need to remain steadfast in our faith and have strength in that, and remain strong as a family, because anytime tragedy strikes like that, it can create a mess, and it causes turmoil, and you don't intend it to, within families and stuff like that. And so I thought, if anyone needs to stay strong, it's me, because I need to try and keep a level head about this. And I pushed through it, and it definitely helped my faith. Single-handedly was one of the main things that got me through that, for sure.
Paige, you were right there with him through all of this, right? Through the passing of Amber, and then even just the difficulty dealing with COVID. Could you talk about like your relationship with Aaron, and your relationship even with church at this point, now that Amber is gone? How was that going?
So I work in healthcare, so I experienced COVID in a way. Now, I didn't work with the adult side of that, so I work with babies. So it was a very different side, but I understood what it felt to be a healthcare worker during COVID, and I think that kind of gave us a lot of anxiety with her being in the hospital, and then her passing, and just kind of like the limited visitation that you were allowed to do because of COVID. And so I took on the role of kind of like a mediator, and just tried to be like this overly strong person, just for him and his family during that time. And I think the reason that I was able to do that is from prayer, but it was just singled prayer. So we weren't really involved a whole lot with the church at that point. We had went to a large, basically a mega church off campus, and just didn't really have a whole lot of connection there. We didn't have like
Really
a
no
life group
connection, yeah.
connection. So, and then the church just kind of really didn't do a whole lot during COVID. And that was a concern for us when that started happening, that we just kind of had felt like abandoned by a church
'Cause they
during
stopped
this.
doing it online too,
Yeah,
so you
like there
couldn't
was
see
nothing
services.
online. It was just like a tragic point in the world's lives. And there was just like no support from this church. And so that kind of left us realizing that we wanted something different. But so when I say singled prayer, I mean like just people I knew.
Yeah.
Because we weren't involved with a whole lot. And I remember multiple times during all like the weeks that it was going on and the following weeks after Amber's passing, that I would just sit in my car in the garage and just like cry on the phone with my mom and pray with my mom and say to her multiple times, like, how do I, as a wife, support my husband through this? Like, like, what words do you have to say? I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry it doesn't do justice that this is what's happened. And so, there was a lot of like the singled prayer like that. So people that like we knew, and just basically like my parents and my family and just the little community that my family had were a huge support to us during all the things that happened with Amber and even after her passing. But it was very singled.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It definitely was. I think it did definitely strengthen my faith as well, like he said, because you had to just lean in because there was nothing else. So we had to really lean into each other, and just learn to trust that like this is God's plan. I don't have to like it and that's okay.
Yeah.
But this is what's intended, and he loves us, and we can still distribute that love to the world because this isn't meant in like hurt from God. This is out of love still too.
Yeah. So you've both shared about your growing up years and how they were spent in the church. You both have a good foundation, and you're married now, kind of looking for your own church. What do you look for in your own church as a married couple now?
Good.
I think for us, based on our experience with larger churches and just enjoying them but never feeling that connection, I think both of us kind of had this like epiphany at the same time. Like maybe that works for some people, but that's not what we're looking for. And so for us, a church that you can not only know pretty much everyone there, but something that has a firm foundation and something that you can grow with, and volunteer with and assist with, and like I said, where people know your name, and more importantly, when tragedy strikes, that they have your number, they can just text you, or your small group can text you and just have a prayer chain going. Like I believe in the power of prayer for sure, and I believe that that is a huge benefit to knowing people at a church and having that connection. And so I think for us, that's what we're looking for, not only for ourselves, but then for our family and for our baby girl, and then any other kids we have in the future. We want them to see that that's important to have that that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's fast forward just a little bit in your story.
Sure.
You're kind of, you're grieving the loss of your sister. The world is still dealing with COVID. It was hanging out there for a while. And you didn't find the connection that you were looking for, right? But you spent some time looking for church, right? You've got this great idea what you're looking for. So how did you find the mill eventually as a married couple now and land here? How did that go?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a funny story. So they John Slusser helped start a basketball league here, men's basketball league, and I actually heard about it through our insurance agent. Jared, who is friends with John or JT as we call him, and he knew I liked to play basketball, and so he invited me to be part of his team, and so we came here, and I was kind of nervous, but I'm like, yeah, I haven't played in a few years, but I'll give it a try, and oh, I remember this church. I've been here on and off 4 or 5 times throughout my entire life. Like I know exactly where this is at, right? So I was comfortable kind of right away from that, but we get here and I noticed some people that I recognize, and one of them was Pastor Jesse, who I look at him and I came up to him and I said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And if I remember correctly, I think he actually thought I was my dad, because the last time we had seen each other, I was maybe 11, and so yeah, he's like, "Yeah, Ralph," and I'm like, "No, no, that's not me. I'm his son. I'm Aaron." And he's like, "What? What? Like you're like this big, And so we got to catching up, and I remember saying, "Well, what are you doing here? Like you just play basketball in this league too?" And he said, "No, I'm the lead pastor here." And I thought, what? Like where'd that come from? Last time I saw you, you weren't doing that. You were singing and stuff, right? But I was like, that's great. That's awesome. So again, kind of that weird small world connection. But that's how we ended up getting here. And really what kind of pulled us in, I think Paige was more comfortable at the time, admittedly, making the jump than I was. And she actually, within the first couple weeks of the basketball league, I remember pulled Jesse aside at one point and was like grilling him. Not really. But she was
Not
asking.
really grilling him.
You weren't really grilling him.
I just wanted
say
to
that
know. I was
playfully.
like, so what is your church? Like,
Yeah,
what is
what
this
is this thing?
church?
Yeah.
She's
And
asked some other questions.
we kind of talked a little bit about like how I had experienced church hurt in the past and how I'd only done some mega churches and things like that. And how we were just looking for like this community of people to like raise our family together in, and just kind of like grow up and like have people that were just like there. Like when we needed people, they were there. And he really was like, well, that's what this church is. We're just a community. We're just a community of people that love each other and just want to be part of each other's lives. And I very vividly remember sitting on the steps of our townhouse. At that point, we lived in a townhouse, and he was in the kitchen, and I was like, we need to go to church here. This is what we need to do. Like, I just know it. This is exactly what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go to church here, and I think we're going to love it.
Yeah.
And on our very first Sunday here, we walked in, and
everyone
acted like they knew exactly who we were and had been friends for 15 years, and were shaking
Seriously.
hands and smiling and giving hugs. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is
We
fantastic.
actually walked in the sanctuary, I remember, and I was like, yeah, you're not getting that at a large church for sure.
No.
Like right off the bat, I remember saying that.
Yeah.
And it just, from then on, I was like, this is it. This is the comfortability. This is exactly what we've been like looking for, and just the kind of people we want to be with and, praise God with.
So in your story now, you're here at the mill. You're engaged. Both of you pretty much are serving in kind of different areas, which I love that, by the way. I love people that just like jump in and like ready to go. Like, this is my church. And tragedy strikes again. Aaron, in your family now, something's going on with your brother. Can you kind of tell us about that and walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Andrew, let's see. I remember we got the call. Unfortunately, it was actually on my mom's birthday, of all days. But I remember getting a call from my dad at 12. I want to say it was like 12:37 p.m. a.m. Excuse me, 12:37 a.m. It's the middle of the night, and I knew something was wrong because we were asleep. And usually we don't get calls that late, right? And so I kind of jumped out of bed. I heard my dad's ringtone, and I answered the phone like, "What happened?" I think is what I said.
Yeah.
Because that's very unlike him to call. And and that's when he told me he had thought, we hadn't confirmed anything, but he had thought my brother had passed. And so Andrew, again, as you mentioned, another tragedy. It was another shock. He was 37. I remember taking that call. I kind of fell into the doorway. I lost my breath, truly felt like someone just punched me in the gut. And Paige I just remember, it's kind of fuzzy, but I remember hearing you behind me say, what happened? What happened? And I couldn't talk. I literally was speechless. And I slowly walked over to the bed and sat down, and I eventually just kind of told her And so we got in the car and drove over there and to his apartment. And they had my mom trying to get her calmed down and everything, and some of my other family was there. And so what we learned is that his loss was self-inflicted. He'd committed suicide, and it was a shock. We knew he had some things going on, and mentally, and he'd always battled with addiction, and alcoholism and stuff like that. But he'd cleaned himself up, years ago. He hadn't drank in 14 years, I believe, and so. But he had always kind of struggled with that, and I think the tipping point for him was just a buildup of dealing with my sister's loss, which he had admitted at one point he felt like, she was his little sister. It was his responsibility to protect her, and he couldn't, from whatever may have happened, whatever possible domestic violence may have happened. We don't know, but he'd always felt kind of, I think, a guilt or a shame from that, even though, of course, it wasn't his fault. And then, of course, after her passing, his dad, remember they're my half sibling, so his dad had actually passed of a pretty aggressive cancer as well. And he had lived with his dad. He had tried to, he had helped taking care of him in his final days and stuff. And I think it's just too much for him to deal with. But my brother was the type where he was very good at telling people what they wanted to hear and putting on a good face. He was kind of your stereotypical proud male. He had a lot of pride, and I think he was just, I think he thought he wasn't able to be helped. The more I think about it, and he was too far gone and there's too much damage. But the crazy thing is I'd seen him 2 days prior to watch the solar eclipse event that happened.
Oh, wow.
I believe that was on April 8th, and so we watched that. And the reason I mention that is because you couldn't tell. Like when we were there, when we were talking, he was fine. We had a normal conversation like we always do. Seemed like a normal day. And as time passed and we learned more, we found out it was something he had planned for at least 6 weeks, probably longer. But I can trace back at least that far with connecting some dots of things maybe he'd said or things he'd started giving away to people, and just, but he did it slowly over time and with different people that no one connected the dots. He was very, very planned about it. And so he knew what he was wanting to do. And so it was definitely a shock. And but this time around, we had our church here, and I think that made the world of difference for us.
So let's talk about your faith journeys. How's it developed, and how's it play into your relationships and the tragedies that you guys have faced?
So I would say that, as the spouse, the death of Amber was a lot harder to deal with because we didn't have a church family. And we had faith within each other and obviously within Christ and our own personal faith, but we didn't have this large group of people around us that were supporting our faith, really. And then, it was literally a night and day difference when Andrew just passed. The support we had and just this overwhelming calmness that we had within each other, each personally, within the family, our ease of coping has been so much better and significantly better. And there's no other way to say it than it's just being a part of a church and having faith within this community of people that all believe the same. And it's literally a night and day difference. Yeah. For sure.
I want to double down on that too, because I think you hit on the calmness part. I think that was the biggest thing I noticed. In fact, I'd mentioned to Paige several times. I remember saying, this feels strange to me. I feel like I should be just a lot more of an emotional wreck and a lot more just in pieces in what I am. And don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong. It was definitely very difficult. And I still feel like I grieved as most people would, just kind of in shock, felt like it wasn't real, you know. But the comparison between losing my sister abruptly, losing my brother abruptly was totally different, in that I had this overwhelming sense of calm. Like I felt like if I needed to break down, like it would have been harder for me to do that. Like I just felt like this strength, I guess, behind me. Like it's okay. Like I can keep it together. I have my people. I have my family. I have my church, and you know I need to be strong too because, like, most importantly, my mom needs me. You know, there's only three of us. She's lost now two of her three kids, and I think without having the support of our friends in our church here and Paige and my family, I wouldn't have been able to help lift her up and keep her going. It was enough for just me, but then to kind of carry that weight for her, it was hard. But again, I give that credit to the support we had. A large part of that credit to the support we had through here.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of in the Bible where it talks about the peace that passes all understanding. If it feels like you guys have really experienced that.
100%.
Oh, so true.
That's what I said. Like, I can't make sense of it. I said those words. I said, I don't understand. I can't make sense of it. Like, it's just, of course, I'm upset, right? It doesn't take any of that away, but like, I just feel like this overwhelming, like, peace with it. And I imagine that has to be what
Yeah.
that was, you know? Never felt that before.
The experience that you had, you have a marked difference between having that church family and not having that church family. Can you talk about your life group and like what kind of experience you had there with them?
Yeah, so obviously as the spouse, you're the one that kind of like does all the intricate things when something happens to your spouse and their family. And so I immediately, I think the following morning, sent this text to our life group and had said, you know, this is what happened. Andrew's, you know, Aaron's brother has passed. This is the circumstance of what happened, and we need a lot of prayer. And it was beautiful to just feel that and not even know that it was occurring. And then just not only that, but just like the just everyday life support. So like the messages like, hey, can I do anything? Can I take your dogs out? Do you need your lawn mowed? Do you need meals? Like
Yeah.
that's just like doing life
Practical
together
stuff,
and
yeah.
like practical things. And, you know, our life group not only supported just us, but also supported his parents in just practical things. So they got like a DoorDash gift card for them, for his parents to be able to use, which was just nice, like to not have to worry about that.
It really was. Yeah.
And so that's just like doing life together as our life group when a tragedy strikes, but not having to ask at all. Just said, this is what's going on. That's all.
Yeah.
And if I can add to that, I'd like to point out too, you know, you mentioned my parents, you know, they, like she said, our life group kind of helped them out too with like a DoorDash gift card. And my mom told me, she actually told me today that, you know, one of the reasons that they go here now, because they're members of the church here, is the support they got from this. I mean, they felt that overwhelming love and support from the church and from the small group, and even from people that they hadn't met yet or didn't know, who kind of know their story now and have reached out. And again, that's just not something I think you'll get at a lot of places, and it's one of the things that drew them in and has held them here.
That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so you've been through a lot, but you've got a really good foundation. Let me ask you this: so we just went through like a fasting period. So before fasting with the church, you guys, you grew up in the church. You've heard about this before. What was your perspective on fasting, and what did you think when Jesse announced, "Hey, we're going to do an all church fast"? What did you guys think about that?
Well, my perspective on fasting, I didn't know a whole lot about it. I just assumed it was related to food, which I think a lot of people do. And I thought, man, I'm, I can't afford to not eat, so, I mean, look at me. So, um, no, I was like, that's gonna be tough. I don't know about that one. But then as he kind of elaborated on it more, it made more sense. And I started immediately thinking, what are some things I could fast and some things that would challenge me, but also benefit my daily life. And that was kind of my perception of it initially, and then what I understood it to be.
And I actually grew up obviously in the youth ministry, and we used to do 48-hour fasts as a youth ministry, like as a youth group at one of the churches that we went to. So that was, a food fast. And so we endured it together as a youth group. So that was immediately as well as what I thought. But I did the same thing, just kind of thinking about like what in my daily life distracts me from time with God. And I decided that it was social media, and I think you did too. This is modern age. It's just a distraction. It's at our fingertips. It's on our phones. It's on our computers. It's always there. It's readily accessible, and so that's what we had kind of decided was what should be fasted. Is that's the distraction from spending time with God.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
What made you take the leap into fasting? Like, it sounds like that you weren't scared at all or nervous at all. Was it finding out more about fasting beforehand, maybe?
I think a little for me was just I like a challenge. And knowing that like as a church we were all going to be doing something together, whether it be the same thing or something different, and just challenging myself to make a change, like see what can happen and change a behavior that maybe doesn't need to occur, so that I can spend more time on whether that be family or time with God or
Yeah.
just restful time.
So what did the fast look like? Was it the same for each of you? Like, it wasn't food, so it was social media. How did that work?
It was probably a little different for both of us, but like she said, we both kind of did the same thing. And, it for me, it was almost like cold turkey, just cutting everything out. Now, I should preface, I guess, I've never been huge into social media. Like, I've never had TikTok on my phone. I'm one of those stubborn. I'm like, they're not getting me. It's not happening. Because believe me, I'm human. I will get sucked into those endless reels just like anyone else, right? But for me, it was like, why don't I just take all these things off my phone, right? Like she said, it was kind of, we both recognize it's a distraction, and especially with everything going on with my brother and my family, I thought, as nice as it would be to maybe turn to something else to divert my attention, I feel like I should be spending this time talking with family, being with family, praying, right? Like being more present in reality. As hard as it was, I feel like when maybe tragedy strikes, people distance themselves and they try to get away from whatever may be going on. And everyone handles it differently. For me, it was almost kind of like just hitting it head on and getting it out of the way and just working through that. That's what I needed to do. And so I thought, I'm taking everything, all of the social media off my phone, any of those distractions, taking them off. And to this day, I don't have any of those things on my phone anymore. Now, it's not to say I don't occasionally look at hers from time to time, but I'm not really as tempted to be distracted by that.
Yeah.
And my fasting was, yes, the social media. But one of the things I decided to do instead of just listening to like everyday music on my way to work, was actually to listen to the audio Bible on my way to and home from work, and just like basically read or listen through the Bible on my way to work. And I will say, like, I still do it frequently. Obviously, not right now because I'm on maternity leave.
Yeah.
I'm not going to work right now.
Nice.
But even after like the church corporate fasting, I would do it, and it just did give me a sense of like calmness and just like, oh, this was a great start to my day or a great end to my day, because
Yeah.
I don't always have a great end to my day at work.
That is good. So let me point this to Erin. on the heels of then losing Andrew, the fasting came. So
Yeah,
it seems
sure.
like you really did discover something that fasting and then focusing on what was really important, right? Because it obviously wasn't all the social media. It was giving you time to
Sure.
kind of process everything.
Yeah, of course.
So what did you discover, and what would you say to encourage someone else who maybe hasn't tried fasting?
Oh yeah. I discovered that, I mean, for me it's it's difficult, but what I realized is like we're as people just easily attached to these distractions in life that you're staring at your phone and you're missing out on so much of reality and what's really in front of you. And I've always kind of known that, but being encouraged, like she said, to do it in a group setting, that was what motivated me. So I thought, yeah, I can do this. Everyone else is doing it. She's doing it, right? Like we do well when we do things together. And so I thought, we're going to do this. And it really kind of made me see that more clearly. Like, yeah, there's lots of distractions going on in the world. And sometimes it's just better to turn out or turn off all that noise and zone in on the important things. And
Yeah.
for me, one of the most important things I've takeaways from that is not only being able to kind of learn to live in the moment a little more, which I like to carry with myself today. Even like I said, I don't really do any of that stuff anymore, social media or anything. But I also was encouraged to start reading the Bible for the first time, which I am now continuing to do.
Yeah.
And now there was a gap. I had actually just started. I just started the Bible, reading it from the beginning. The week that we got the call about my brother, the week that my brother passed, and so of course I did. Just with everything else going on, it wasn't that I wasn't motivated or anything, but I was just tired, long days, not sleeping well. So I took several weeks off from continuing that and just, recently picked it back up again. But my point with all that is that part of the fast for me was I remember I looked at it on my nightstand and I thought, this is a good time to do this. Instead of looking at my phone, maybe I should pick up my Bible that I've had since I was 16, my mom gave me, and read from it. And so that's what I'm doing. And I credit a lot of that from the fasting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Paige, let me ask this to you. In a world of social media and iPhones and technology and all those things, is Jesus viable?
Yes. Um, he's even there on social media. There's so much negativity with social media. I mean, we see it every day, right? But he is there even on a daily basis. So I work in a NICU, a neonatal ICU, and I still get to connect with these families that I took care of their premature babies years down the road because of social media, and still get to have those connections and feel that sense of community with these people that I spent time with in the worst moments of their lives as their child was so sick, and get to see that connection with them still to this day. Like I've been a therapist for respiratory therapist for 7 years, and so some of my patients are now 7 years old.
Oh wow.
So I've watched them be babies, and now they're 7 year olds, and they're in what, second grade or something like that. And to be able to still make that connection with those families and just walk through life with them. Yes, they're from all over the state, so that's how we stay connected. And so it's there. It's definitely there.
Beautiful. So, future, what are you guys looking forward to? Would you fast again? What about the church? Whatever you want to share with us.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would absolutely fast again and maybe try something different or maybe double down on that. I don't know. Maybe if it's food related, maybe it's getting rid of unhealthy foods and sticking with more healthy ones, or balancing that with exercise or whatever, just to get in shape. But I would definitely do that again, and for me, I'm just looking forward to continuing to see how the church is going to grow. All the new people that's trickling in. It's really great to see that, even though, I mean, we've been coming, what, 4 years. And over that time, I feel like it's grown a little bit, and you can really see that by some of the changes, around us, right? The lobby, the new entrance that they're going to do, and maybe the gym in the future and stuff. And it's, I love being a part of something like that because you can kind of say, many years down the road, this is how it used to be, and we witnessed this. We watched the growth like in front of us, and to be able to have our kids do that, possibly in the future would be really cool. Yeah.
I think it's exciting to watch. We're in this new phase of life with a newborn at home and be able to raise her in this church that's taken us in so open armed and supported us through, tragedy, and then also enjoyed life's newest adventures of a newborn. And be able to do that
Yeah.
as a church and then show her like this is what it means to be a part of a community of Christ. And these are people and family, like this is what is here to support you through life and through the trenches and through the joys. These are the people that will help do that with you.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share or add, or you're talked out?
I think, if it's appropriate to say this, I will say with my experience on these recent tragedies, I think it's important to look for, just be there for each other, continue to check in on your family and on your friends and whatnot. Whether, they have an illness, and, they're trying to keep it to themselves, or whether they're dealing with mental illness in the case of like my brother and then an eventual, suicide. It's like, I never thought something like that would affect me. You hear about it all the time, and it's one of those, it sounds cliche, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's an issue. It's a very sad thing that happens, but that I probably won't be close to that. And then before you know it, it's someone that you're very close with, someone that you share blood with, and that being my brother, I remember I just thought that there's no way this is real. And so I feel like with that, I feel the need to advocate, like if anyone, knows someone that's struggling, to continue to check on them and encourage them to seek help, right? And if you are one of those individuals, like it's bigger than just you, right? Like the decision to do what he did, for example, affected. It had a much larger radius than just him. It's completely changed the trajectory of everyone's lives, especially my mom and his son. He has a 15-year-old son who's turning 16 soon. He's his dad, and and I think people just get so down and so caught up in their own issues that they feel there's no escape. But I would encourage people to definitely just check in on others, and then if you feel like you need to, then reach out, because there's no amount of trouble, worth like what that causes, right? Like you're not going to inconvenience anyone by preventing something like that from happening. I know we would have gone to the edges of the earth and back to have him still here, right? And we would have done anything had we known, but no one knew, So definitely just stay in touch and be strong in your faith, and be there for others, because you never know.
Yeah.
You never know what's going on.
Well, thanks so much for sharing this and being vulnerable and walking out your faith right in front of us.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us.
Wow. Thank you guys so much for being open and honest. A misconception about fasting, and probably a big reason people are skeptical to try it, is that they subconsciously believe that it's a way to wring God's hands to get what they want. But it seems to me you discovered that fasting is really about readjusting your view of what you think is important to what really matters, a relationship with God and a relationship with others. Isn't that what God gave us in the very beginning? And isn't that the reason Jesus died on the cross? So we would be restored to God and to each other. These ancient truths are not negated just because we live in this modern age. I encourage you to discover this for yourself. Next week, we'll talk to Kathy Martin about listening and obeying. You won't want to miss this.